The following is paid programming.
It's time to talk taxes.
New friends, new opportunities, new partners. EG Tax.
It's Ask the Tax Lady with Esther Gulius and EG Tax on News Radio 930 WBEN. To reach Esther now, call 803-0930. Toll free at 1-800-616-9236. And cell calls are free at star 930. And now, live from the WBEN studios, it's Esther Gulius.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is Ask the Tax Lady, minus Esther Gulius. I'm Chris Fabian, here with my beautiful wife, Tiffany Fabian from EG Tax.
Hey there, Christopher.
How you doing?
Good.
And last week, we got a lot of calls about the STAR program. And we promised people we're going to tell what it is, what's going on with it. And I made some phone calls. And it's a really bizarre program. But we also have in studio, we're continuing our summer series. We have Mike Lomas, almost said Mike Wiggle, and Glenn Lomas.
Close enough. We share the same brain. So
yeah. But they're from the Financial Guys. They are the Financial Guys. And, we want to talk about money today, and we're going to help with whatever way we can. So get your calls in now, 803-0930, 803-0930, star 930 on your cell phone.
You guys still do the show, the TV show?
Yes, yep.
What
Every
day?
Tuesday on WGRZ.
You're a huge fan, huh, Tiff?
We're working.
I like when people pretend they don't watch it every week. That's right.
I just keep working.
She does have a day job. Is your mic on?
Yeah, it sounds funny. I don't think your mic's on.
I hit the button.
Let's see. I think it's on.
Oh, wait, here. It's over here.
There we go.
Can you guys hear me, Frank?
You know,
Okay.
Okay.
We'll blame Frank.
this is what we do on our show. We just keep pressing buttons until
That's
something
right.
works. It's either going to smoke or work.
Thank
That's
God
it.
there's not an eject button, because
Yeah.
I'm sure we'd hit that by now. There goes Mike.
But you know what? That almost seems what New York State's doing with the STAR program, hitting the eject button, because the new homeowners don't get the STAR.
Are you kidding?
Don't get the STAR relief on their proper school taxes. You have to pay 100% of your school tax, and then eventually they're going to mail you a check.
Isn't that ridiculous? Or eventually they'll mail you a check, right? By the way, my parents still have not received their New York State tax refund.
Wow.
Oh,
Have
yeah.
still
and
not
that's-
received a New York State
and
tax.
that's the problem with this, because we see how we have lots and lots of clients are still calling us.
It's
Where's
the end
our
of
refund?
August. It's the end of August, though.
But they used an excuse saying we need your W-2s.
They
So-
didn't ask for anything for
They
me
didn't
and my
ask-
parents.
Wow.
No, I think they sent him a Dumb and Dumber letter. This is an IOU. You might want to hold on to it.
Yeah, but
the logic is that they asked for W-2s. I asked New York State why, and they said because identity theft is on the rise.
Oh, please.
That it's
Yeah.
very important that they really make sure that this is you and you're withholding.
Yeah, because they're smart enough to know that, right?
Right. Very well put.
so then you send in your W-2s and you think, okay, I'll get my money.
This is totally the problem with all these ridiculous shell games that states like New York play, right?
Yep.
Let's take as much money as we can.
Yep.
Let's make it as complicated as possible to not give people their money back.
Yep.
And then they run out of money, because that's what happens with socialism, and that's where we are now, and people don't get their money back.
And I think the Medicaid that we have in the state now is another reason there's a drain on the funds and things like that. So
Oh, God, yeah.
The Cadillac plan.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of it.
The Cadillac plan. Why go to work?
I keep, every now and again, somebody emails me, hey, I was checking the unclaimed funds, and I just, for whatever reason, put your name in, and you have funds at the state. And I do. I have commission checks that are due me. I have written to the state. I've filled out the form. They sent me back a letter that said we're behind. Like, if you send me a letter, just send me the check.
Yeah.
Stick the check in the envelope,
I
you
think
morons.
EG Tax had
We haven't heard anything. We have like 3 checks out there.
I got a letter
too.
back that said we're behind. We'll get it in about a year. Well, a year went by, and then 2 years, and then 3 years. Well, that was like a decade ago. I'm not even kidding you.
Yeah.
So
It's still there.
It's spent.
Can't get it.
Yeah.
It's bad.
with the new star, what year?
2015 going forward. You
Okay.
have to apply right online.
So when we closed on our house,
We have to pay 100% of our property tax.
okay,
School
because
And
tax.
then get a rebate back.
We just
Yep.
closed on our new
What a
house
show.
a year
October of last
October.
year.
Why would wasn't that more complicated? I mean, is that just the jobs program for them? So we're
Yes.
going to collect all the money
And hold
now
on
we're
to it.
and then we're going to have to figure out a system to send it back to you. That's just ridiculous.
So
Well,
the
How about this? How about no star program? No ridiculousness. Just cut the damn taxes. Just
That
lower the
makes sense.
taxes.
Let me
But we
ask you
gotta
this.
play
Now, you're
games.
the tax people. I don't mean to switch you in the hot seat, but how do we do that with our taxes? So how do I set it up where I'm going to send them an IOU this year?
Change your
pay-
withholding.
change your withholding.
No. I mean, not pay them at all. And
Oh,
just say,
yeah, well, that-
like when
Check
my
the
parents.
mail.
It
I think what I'm
sounds
going to do
like-
is I'll write a little note to Andrew Cuomo
It
that says,
sounds
when my
like-
parents get their refund back, I'll send in my money for you.
President Trump did okay, and he did NOLs, and that helped him on his taxes. So
Yep.
there's.
I mean, you wish there was other ways, but the problem is when they owe you money, okay, your mom and dad, when they get their check, they'll be like 0.5% interest. But if you owe them, they're going to charge you 7%.
If I owe them, I go to jail, right? I lose my house.
Lose
Yeah.
your license, lose
Yeah.
your...
I've had people this week who came to see me, and the IRS in New York State were doing their refund. I mean, their paycheck. They were dipping into their paycheck because they owed
Paycheck,
them.
Social Security.
and
but-
this is a lady who couldn't afford for them to garnish her paycheck.
Now, I'm sure Brian Higgins will be on that any day now.
Yeah.
Did you hear that story, Brian?
She
That's a
could-
good ribbon cutting for
She
you.
could
there.
not
That's the
afford
person you
it.
could help.
Yeah.
Call us
frustrating.
here in studio, 803-0930, 803-0930, with your questions. But with Mike and Glenn, we get asked all the time, and people, well, aren't you financial people? No, you need to call financial people, because they're like, when should we start? When, especially young kids. I sound like my dad now. Get off my lawn.
You are your dad now.
Yes, I am. But when should young couples start putting money away?
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
As soon as they graduate from college and they get their first job, if that job has a 401k, they should be participating.
But
if
Glenn,
it
they're
doesn't,
going to live forever.
but
right?
if it doesn't, they should be contributing to a Roth IRA. Well, they're going to live forever or not. Here's what young people do: they get out of school, they finally get a paycheck, and they go, "Ooh, boy, boat,
I need to
car,
buy this
house. House might be on the list." But
Well, and I think for the demographics of this show, right, let's reach out to the parents. I'll tell you a cool story. I remember fishing with my dad. We used to muskie fish in the upper river 3 days a week. My dad worked 4 days on, 4 days off, and in the summer we would muskie fish. And I remember him telling me all the time about his 401k plan. He was putting money into
That's
it. He was trying to
cool.
convince other people. Then to this day, my father should have been a financial planner
Yes,
because
he should have.
he's convincing people, hey, you got to do this. You got to do this. I remember him sitting down with me and saying, Mike, look I'm telling you, you got to put money away. And I even remember, I'll tell some of the funny stories. He would say, your mom's mad at me. I'm putting too much money into this thing, but she won't be mad at me one day.
That's right.
And she's right.
That's
He's right now. She's like, mom's not mad at me
That's
now.
right.
Look at, because we're retired and we're in a good position.
Is it smart? So I have two 401ks, one at EG Tax and another place where I was a nurse. And I just took the money that I had at my nursing job and moved it into 90% secure. And it was an old fund, so the interest rate is 5%, they said. My broker said, which is unheard of. But I think that the market is going to dip soon, so I moved it into safe stuff.
I want your crystal ball. You got to send that over to me.
that's right.
The EG Tax crystal ball.
Yeah, it's a crystal ball, right?
Let me say this. If you've got a 5% guarantee,
I know.
That's good.
They said
that's incredible. You don't want to lose that.
They said Schofield had a really old plan.
But here's
it was with Lincoln.
Let me tell you what we do with our clients, okay? We do a lot of homework to try to figure out where they are now,
Right.
where they need to be,
Yeah.
how much money they need to put away to accomplish that, and at what rate of return,
Okay.
right? Because rule of 72, if you're in 10% divided into 72, it's going to take you 7.2 years to double your money.
Okay.
If you leave all your money in a bank account now at 1%, it's going to take 72 years to double
Gotcha.
your money,
Yeah,
right?
if you're lucky.
And so, but here's the thing. As we all know, there's no such thing as a free ride.
Right.
So the more risk we take to try to earn 9 or 10%,
Yeah.
the more fluctuations that's going to come with.
Yeah.
And it's really, from our standpoint as a financial advisor, it's frustrating when I hear people say, well, I'm afraid to put my money in the stock market because I'm going to lose it all.
Right.
If you lose it all, the world has financially blown up.
Yeah.
And I don't care
Yeah.
whether you have it buried in your backyard or underneath your mattress. It's useless, right?
Yeah.
It's a matter of, can you stomach the fluctuations? We just went through the worst recession since the Great Depression, and if you bought stocks at the top of the market,
had to do with the housing bubble burst.
but if you bought stocks at the top of the market and held it till now, you're okay, right?
Yeah.
You just got to have the time frame. So what we do is we do some risk tolerance questionnaires to try to figure out what type of investor the person is,
Gotcha.
and then we match it up with their goals and objectives to say, Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, you came out as middle of the road. We think if you invest that way, you're going to earn a 5 or 6% rate
Right.
of return. Is that going to get you to where you need to be?
Gotcha.
Right
Gotcha.
now, I can tell you sometimes people can afford to earn 1%. I have a pension. I have some Social Security. I don't really need the money there. If it's in CDs and it earns 1%,
that
great.
makes sense. That's
a lot of people
logical.
need to step
so
up on the
maybe
scale.
they're a teacher, they have a nice pension, and so they could afford the 1%.
Absolutely a way to screen out advisors, by the way, homework.
Be careful timing markets, though, because what tends to happen is, let's say you do get out, you pull your money out, you go to a cash or whatever safe position, and the markets go higher. Then it's a waiting game of when do I get back in. That's always it's easier to get out than it is to get back in, right? That's what I find, at least. Is that it's easy to say, I'm going to put some money in cash. Better off having a balanced portfolio and rebalancing. And if you do that systematically, what will happen is when the markets do correct, let's say they have a 10% correction, trigger a rebalance. You're taking some money out of the bonds or the fixed income, moving it back to stock. If you set up an allocation that matches what your comfort level is, just say 65-35 stock to bond, then it gives you the opportunity to take advantage when things are down. And for me personally, I always feel like if I can do something to better myself or my family when the markets are down, just do something proactive. I just feel better about it, And a rebalance is a very simple thing to do.
And I think Mike said a really good point. He said that if the broker that you're with doesn't do these questions, doesn't say these things, you might want to scratch your head and say, wait a minute.
Great way to screen people out. If you're interviewing financial planners and they're talking to you about product as opposed to process, you immediately move on. No doubt about it. Be careful about timing market. I sent Glenn an article this morning. More people have pulled money out of stock funds over the last 6 to 12 months than the last time was 2004. 2004 to 2000 and
wow. I mean, in a raging bull market over that time.
Yeah. So that's right. So, but here's the thing: that is a very bullish sign. When people like you, no offense, but when people like you are telling me, I think there's going to be a correction, that usually means we're on for much higher days.
Gotcha.
Not always, but usually.
Okay, let's take a fast break, and we'll answer your financial questions after the break.
You're a rich girl, and you're gone too far, 'cause you know it don't matter anyway. You can rely on the old man's money.
Now, isn't that what a lot of young people do? They rely on their old man's money. A
lot of them.
This Chris and Tiffany from EG Tax. We're here in studio with Mike and Glenn from the Financial Guys.
Thanks for having us again.
Thank you. We didn't say thank you. How rude of us. We just jumped in from our show. We were all fired up.
I think you just got done talking. So how many hours?
I just think we live here on Saturday.
That's right.
What are you doing in my house?
But isn't that the case?
Do you have a robe and some cigars here?
Frank's in there going, I do live here. They don't let me leave. I do live
I'm chained to my desk.
It makes you feel any better, Frank? Neither of us get paid very well here. So.
Actually, does make me feel better.
Does it? That's good.
There you go.
But, I hate to say it, but I see a lot of older people nowadays come into my office. They're like 85 years old. They have well over 7 figures in securities, in bank accounts, and they go, what do I do? When do you tell people to spend it?
Well, you want to have they want to?
Well, yeah. I mean, it's ideally if they're not going to spend it. Okay, so if you're in that position, let's say you're 70-something years old or whatever, 60s or whatever, and you've got a pension, things like that, and you've accumulated a 7-figure a nest egg. What you have to be worried about are a couple of things. Number one is state taxes, right? So, or any sort of taxes, income taxes, whatever, when you pass away and pass that money on. The other thing is a nursing home, right? So those are some things that, there's, sadly, when we see this a lot in our office, right? We have a lot of clients who, their mom or their dad are in their 90s and they're watching what they thought was going to be their inheritance basically get paid to the nursing home.
$15,000
so Mark Hamister
a month.
can build another mansion somewhere.
Yep.
So and that's so. I mean, gifting is important. I think that's a big deal. I think utilizing trust and moving that money out of the name is a big deal. Obviously, if they want to spend it and they're sometimes we'll see families that don't really comprehend what kind of wealth that they've accumulated. And they've done a great job accumulating it, but to them they still feel like they're living poor. We've seen that a number of times where they're not buying the new carpeting in their house and it's falling apart, or the windows are leaking, or the roof has a leak, and
their car is 30 years old.
Yeah, and they're saying, "Oh my God, I can't afford it." And so sometimes it's just a matter of explaining to them and helping them to understand the kind of wealth that they have. But gifting is I think better than spending if you can do it.
Ooh, go on,
It's a
Mike.
different generation, though, right? I mean, you're
For
talking about
sure.
somebody
Oh, it
that's
is.
85 years old.
Absolutely.
Save.
Well, but 85 years old, there wasn't like $45,000 a year worth of welfare when they were growing up, right? They lost their job, and it was, no, I have to get another one. And so, which I think is where we really need to get back to. But the point is that when folks earn their own money and they save their own money, it's really difficult for them to say, okay, when do I spend it, right? The answer might be never, because, they just, that's what they are. They're accumulators. They're savers. They have that money because they didn't squander it away, right? And it's different. That's why lawsuits, by the way, 90% of all lawsuits won, money is spent within 3 years. Why? Because they didn't earn it, right?
Yeah.
We see that with inheritance all the time. I'll tell you, most of the time when somebody comes in and says
Before
that,
the break, let's go to Rick, if we could. Sorry to step on you. Okay, go to Rick.
Okay, Rick's got, I think, a nice question for you guys. Go ahead, Rick.
that's good. I like nice ones.
I say you guys are wrong. No way, because I'm not that much of an expert in the finances. But with regard, I noticed that you mentioned that when kids get out of school and they, graduate, they start earning some money, that they should be putting their money into a Roth IRA. And that's where I have the question. And I don't want to say you're wrong, but in my particular.
Well, then stop saying it, Rick. You've said it like 3 times. Don't if you don't want to say it, don't say it. No, I think the point is that you look at things like Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs, 401k plans. It would be we couldn't say this is where it should go because we don't know enough. I'll tell you, we have a young person came in our office the other day, hired by it was a food distribution company as a marketing expert, and they're going to pay him $100,000 a year. It might be more beneficial for him to use a traditional IRA or a 401k plan so he can take the tax deduction today. I think the point was, as Glenn and I were talking before, is that a lot of folks start out, right, you're earning $25,000, $30,000 a year. You're not in a very high tax bracket. You're not going to get a tax break, so why not put a little bit away in a tax-free bucket?
And
But
Chris,
certainly do the homework first.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but somebody who's younger, a Roth might be better for a younger person than an older person starting off. I mean, usually we don't tout Roths, you and I and Esther, but for a younger person, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it depends where they get their job. Maybe it's a young person who just got a job teaching at a public school.
Right.
So they're going to have a pension, which,
Well, but what if they don't really pay any taxes?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They're eligible to put money in an IRA account. Would you rather put money in a tax-free account or account that's going to be taxable later?
Yeah,
Right?
if
Without the
and
deduction.
with
Right?
the crystal ball, though.
So tell me I'm wrong now, Rick.
Well, here's the thing. I think it's interesting because I think accountants and CPAs, and I grew up in a family of accountants. My father and my uncle were both CPAs for 40-some-odd years, right, their whole career.
Right.
So I know the mentality, and the mentality, it's a little bit different than the financial services side. It's interesting dynamic, but accountants, CPAs, tax preparers, they're always focused on minimizing taxes.
Defer.
Yeah, because and the logic makes sense, right? Because you don't know what the tax rates are going to be in the future. They could be higher, they could be lower.
Well, and you guys get yelled at today.
That's right.
You lower my taxes today.
Right now.
Right.
I want to pay lower taxes now.
That's right.
Our viewpoint as financial advisors is more like 10 years down the line, 20 years, 30 years. We have to take a much longer term view because if we do work with a 30-year-old, let's say, they're not going to retire until they're 65, and then we're going to work with them beyond that. We have families we're working with their third generation, where we had the parents, then their kids, and now their kids are clients. And so,
just like our world.
yeah. So we have to. We're looking at a financial plan though over a much longer time frame than a typical accountant or tax preparer.
Because we get judged on
Today,
our immediate.
this year.
You get judged
Absolutely.
5 years from now. But everybody expects all of us to have that crystal ball, that magic.
And neither of us do. Right?
And then
who
also
knows?
President Trump is thinking about changing the tax code. So what if the tax code changes? And so there goes
Unlikely.
the idea. Yeah.
Unlikely.
Unlikely. Based on our previous interview,
Right.
the Republicans, I guess, are banking on working with Democrats to pass tax reform.
Yeah.
That's their first. But Chuck Schumer said he's going to vote for it.
He's
so
going to
we're
help.
all good. We're all good.
He's going to help.
I'm sure he's trustworthy.
Lump on a log, Schumer?
I'll tell you what.
I'm sure he's.
If
I'm
Schumer
sure you can
starts
take him at his word.
If Schumer starts to embrace any tax cuts without all kinds of pork attached to it, I quit.
That's right.
But that's where, like you said before the break, that you look 7 years. You look to double your money at 7% is 7 years.
Yeah.
But I've seen
7% would be 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. But you got to know. The thing is, you got to do your homework to figure out what is your risk tolerance, and then what can you expect from that, right? Because it's unrealistic for somebody to come in and say, "I want to earn 6% right now, and by the way, I don't want any market risk." Well, I'd like to fly I'd like to be able to fly too, but I can't, right? That's not there. So you have to be realistic. And then you also have to be realistic about your expectations on when you want to retire and how you're going to get there. Because if you think you're going to put all your money in a CD at 3%, then you better put a lot of money away to make up for that, not getting that rate of return. I was
just going to say, when does age start looking, when you start more looking at age?
Well, we're not big fans of age, and I know there's a lot of firms that will say you should look at age. Where are we up against the clock? I'm not
another minute.
They should say you should look at age. It's all about when do you plan on retiring? What are your goals and objectives? Because I can tell you that we have clients that are 65 years old that do not plan on retiring
for another 10 years at least.
15, right? They're happy, they're healthy, they're doing good stuff. We also have clients that are 50 years old that plan on retiring in 3 years, right? Does age play a factor of it? Nah, really more goals and objectives. Where's your money? What is your risk tolerance? I'll tell you, we have 85-year-old people that have 65, 70% of their money in the stock market because that's how they made their wealth. And if we told them they need to go down to 30 because of their age, they'd say, no way.
So it's very individual.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll carry this conversation up after the break. Call us here at Studio WBN, 803-0930, 803-0930. Star 930 on your cell phone. Brain
and we'll get to Nancy on the other side.
Yep.
Sorry, Abusa.
It's been 1 week since you looked at me. Cocked your head to the side and said I'm angry. 5 days since you laughed at me. Saying,
oh, yeah, that's what we're doing. We're laughing. We're having fun here on the radio. EG Tax. Ask the Tax Lady, Chris Fabian, Tiffany Fabian in studio with our special guests for continuing our summer series, Mike Lomas and Glenn Wiggle, the financial guys. And your phone number for people, I know everybody knows it, but let's give it out again.
633-1515. Like us on Facebook and follow us at FinGuys on Twitter.
And I should say that our tax schools I would be remiss if I didn't say that our tax schools are starting soon, beginning of October. Great way to learn taxes from A to Z, and our hope is that you'll come and work for us.
Yep.
That's what our hope is.
And if we say something, if the financial guys say something, give us a call, 803-0930. Someone texted in, hard to gift it at 85 years old because the recipient has to give it back when they go into a nursing home. We're not.
That's true. And I'm not saying, go off and, gift it to a charity and then, because then you wouldn't qualify for Medicaid, right? So if you are at a point where you're about to go into a nursing home, all bets are off. It's too late.
There's still some planning you can do.
There's some, but for the most part, you're not going to be gifting unless you have other things that are going to pay for it. Gifting is going to be difficult.
And by the way, it's got to be right for the person. I think everybody forgets that, right?
Course,
like sometimes the kids will say, well, your mom and dad should do this. Well, guess what? Mom and dad saved the money.
That's right.
So they have a vote in this.
Yeah, they do.
A big one,
A big one.
And you can also use a trust, though, too. So you can set up, if you're worried about that aspect, let's say that you are 85, and there is a prospect that you might be going to nursing home within 5 years. Well, then set up a trust and gift it to the trust as opposed to the kids. The idea is you got to make it to 5 years, right? So if you gift it at 85, then you got to hope to do whatever you can to make it to 90 and before you ever go into a nursing home or at least apply for Medicare or Medicaid, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, and if you do have the money, it's private pay. They don't. If you have enough money to last those 5 years, what you gifted away prior,
That's right.
That's fine. They can't dip back after that because you already paid the 5 years.
It's a lot more complex than simply saying, well, gift it and then go to the nursing home. So I didn't mean to imply that it's an easy the strategies that are involved in protecting your money can be very complex and need to be thought out well in advance. So let me just say.
We, by the way, in-house, we have a wealth manager / attorney, right? And I will tell you, this is one of the most difficult parts of our company is estate planning because it always seems easy and it never is. And then, first of all, how do you talk about death, right? How, especially with your mom and dad there. Okay, mom and dad, we're going to talk about you leaving this world, right? That's not easy. We're going to talk about your money and when do you do it? And I think one of the biggest things I've seen is people feel like, okay, if I'm starting to do this, then it is the last phase. Right. And I don't want to think about that, right? I don't. So a lot of times what people will do is, and I say it's the hardest part of our division because people will come in with all the best intentions and then they'll leave and they won't come back. And it's not because they don't want to work with us. It's because they're afraid to talk about this stuff.
And that's we encounter too.
Yeah.
You know, with the older people, usually it's I tried to talk to my kids, but they don't want to hear it.
Or the people that don't have a will, and then it's going to go to probate, and that just breaks your heart because you don't want to see New York State.
What blows my mind is not the 85-year-olds that don't want to do the planning, because I could see that, right? It's like, I don't want to think about that. What blows my mind is the 40-year-olds that don't do the planning, that have children. They don't have the right life insurance in place. They don't have a will in place. They don't know what's going to happen to their kids. My little dog's here. My wife's got a plan for her if something happens to us, right?
Well, the one thing with the estate side of, when you're talking about estate planning with older folks, seniors, it's a patience thing. So I did a very complex estate plan years ago. It took me over 12 months. I mean, it was a year where, as it was a little bit different scenario, but as the couple got uncomfortable, we would take a step back. We would pause. Yep. It might be a couple of weeks for things to just settle down. You really have to take it very slow and don't take the next step until the first step, that first one is completed. It's like training a dog. Using your dog analogy. I've hunted for years. I've used hunting dogs. I've had a beautiful black lab for many years. And when you're training a dog, you never want to move on to the next step before the first step is complete. So, you want to sit, stay, heel before you move on to retrieving, before you move on. Retrieving's got to be solid before you move on to hand signals and things like that. So
this one just peed on the floor.
Estate planning is the same. Well,
just kidding. Just kidding, Tim Langer.
Just
kidding.
Okay, let's go. Let's talk to Nancy.
That was Bowerly. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, Nancy, how can we help you?
Just teasing.
The Bowerly and Bellavia.
I'm teasing, Tom. Sorry.
Nancy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. How can we help you, Nancy?
I want to know how they determine how much you're supposed to pay for Medicaid when I understand that they take your previous year's earnings to determine your Medicaid payment.
Medicaid or Medicare?
Medicare, I guess. Medicare. But usually you're making more money in that time because you were working before you went on to Social Security. So how do you adjust that?
I don't know that Medicare has anything to do with your income.
Yeah, it does. The more you make, the more you pay.
Does it?
Yep.
I was going to say, we do have a Medicare expert in our office, but it's not Glenn or Mike.
No.
Yeah, you want to call Brian at their office.
633-1515 and ask for Brian Janik.
If it's, I know, Nancy, if it's a one-time thing, like say you hit the $759 million, and next year you're going back down to $25,000. You can fight the Medicare increase. So if it's a one-time thing, you can do that. But if it's a constant, unfortunately, there's not going to be much you can do.
And I know that we've written letters for people in our office who get a letter from Medicare saying that their rate is going to go up. So we'll write a letter. This is the one-time occurrence, and it's not going to happen in the future. So if you think it's a one-time occurrence and you got a letter that your Medicare is going up, let us know.
Okay.
Okay, but if you may want to, like we said, call Brian at 633-1515
to find out the formula for how they determine how much your Medicare is. A really good question.
But call him soon, because in about a month from now
he's going to be crazy.
Yeah, because it's open enrollment.
That's right.
Okay, Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks.
And by the way.
Yep.
Are you still there?
Yes.
Yep.
It's good to hear the money guys talking about money instead of politics.
Well, we'll make sure we insert some politics for you as well, Nancy. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
There was a wink in there.
I'm
Nancy.
just teasing.
If we haven't offended you yet, we will.
It's so
Stick
funny.
around.
One of somebody who's at our office is a lawyer. And he told us, he was on last week, Paul Caputa, and he said that he stopped watching TV over about 10 or 11 years ago. And he says the only thing he really does is listen to the radio. And he says he loves listening to you guys and the whole
Well, I will say
team.
this. We do look, if you want to call our show, we'll always answer your financial questions. We'll always put those to the top of the list oftentimes. But after 18 years of doing radio, to be quite honest, it gets boring for us to do a show where we're talking about asset allocation or diversifying or, I mean, selfishly,
Oh, sure.
we have
This
to
is what
entertain-
we're having them talk about.
we have
Thanks,
to-
Glenn.
No, it's okay. No, it's fine. I'm serious. But it's a little bit different
doing the
scenario.
same
though.
show
I
every
know,
week.
I
right?
know.
I mean, we did that for a year and a half, and guess what happened? Nobody listened.
Right.
So, if nobody's listening to your show and it's not educational, then you don't have a show for very long. And so, for us, we enjoy the politics of it. And really, our show is it's not just a financial show. There are other financial shows out there. Our show is where money meets politics. So, it's really a show about not so much personal finance, although it is. We do talk personal finance, but it's really more about how government policy, how state policy, how that kind of economic policy impacts the financial markets, impacts individuals, impacts taxes. To us, that's a little bit more.
Well, that's how
interesting.
change happens by voices, and so we need some change.
Yeah.
And I think
people
voices
with, people
are
with stones to actually talk about
Yep,
the problems
exactly.
out there. Nancy, by the way, you could have called our show. We would have moved you right to the top, as Glenn said.
Absolutely. No,
So
I do.
call
I'm
them
just
next week
teasing
and
you,
let's
by the way. I'm just teasing you about inserting politics.
Now let's talk about Obamacare for a little bit.
That's right.
Okay.
No, I'm just
yes. No,
Yeah.
but you know what? You just said Brian has Medicare coming up. We have Tim, who I believe is going to be on next week with you guys.
Yes.
Talking about the New York State marketplace and things like that,
Very
because
timely.
open enrollment is coming up sooner
Yeah.
than later. And there's how taxes. Who would ever thought your tax return would ever impact your health insurance?
Well, it's funny you said that because people will now ask us, why do you have a health insurance arm? And I'll say, well, it's funny you said that because 20 years ago when we were starting this firm and we talked about throughout the years adding on divisions, we never just added on a division because we felt like it. We added on a division because people were calling us and they had a need for it, and we'd go out and get an expert to help, right? So, but 20 years ago, if you would have told me insurance would have been probably the number one reason people do or do not retire, I would have said no way, right?
Yep.
My
Yep.
insurance cost was 25, 30, 50 bucks a month or whatever, and it wasn't really that big of a deal. And now it's such a huge, ridiculous cost.
I had a lady come in yesterday. She had some tax questions. Actually, it was helping her get her FICO score, because her bank couldn't do it, which really just blew my mind away that a bank wouldn't help her get it. But and I helped her do that, and then she goes, "Yeah, I'm just running out of money, and my health insurance is $300." I looked at her, I said, "How old are you?" And she goes, "I'm 67. Why?" I said, "Why aren't you on Medicare?" And she goes, "I didn't work. I was the family caregiver my whole life, so I don't have enough quarters in there, so I don't qualify. So I called Blue Cross Blue Shield. They put me on a plan for $360 some odd dollars a month."
Did you give her Brian's number?
Oh, I called.
Tim.
Tim was in the office. I
Yeah.
said, "Tim, come here." And he goes, "Okay, so what's going on?" And I told him, and he goes, "Well, there's an exception to going on Medicare. You might qualify for Medicaid." And she's like, "I don't want to go on Medicaid," because
But
it's the old.
like Esther always says.
It's people have that old mindset.
Welfare.
It's not the
welfare,
same.
and
Yeah.
it's not the same. And Tim goes, "Well, would you rather pay $360 a month, or would you rather pay maybe $20 a month?" for
How
health
awesome is that attitude, though? We need to bring some of that back. right?
Exactly.
It's
Being
helpful.
I don't want to go on
responsible.
Medicaid. I don't want to go on food stamps,
Right.
as opposed to, hey, what's in it for me?
That's right.
Yep.
Oh, that was Obama. That was
is
Obama's
actually
exception speech, by the way.
But that is refreshing, though,
Yeah.
to hear. Seriously,
Yeah.
if somebody says, "You know what? I don't want to do that because I want to pay my own way."
Yeah.
We do need
Oh.
more of
Well,
that.
she
hear
didn't.
that
She didn't
often.
know about. But it's trusting people.
Right.
And and I hate to say that. That's where a lot of people get into. Well, they told me to do this.
Mm.
I mean, I had a guy who paid $800 a month for family coverage
Yeah.
because his brother-in-law was a healthcare provider. Said, "You get this." Tim met with him, got it down to $200 a month.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
we do hear that a lot. And look, everybody, brother-in-laws, aunts, uncles, friends, cousins, they all have the best of intentions,
Yep.
right? Unless they're in the industry.
I'm going to hop to a question that somebody emailed us during the week. They said, "What, you guys, if I don't have money to invest, what should I do?" That's a scratch your head sort of thing. Go get a job that has a 401k.
Well, if you don't have money to invest, well, let me try to. That's a very challenging question. You don't have money to invest. What should I do? The fact of the matter is, you should always pay yourself first, right?
Yeah.
Most people have money. They just decide on where they're going to spend it, right? That same person probably has an iPhone. They
Yep.
probably have cable TV. They probably have a little bit nicer car, so maybe, but it's really important that you pay yourself
Well
first.
said.
I can tell you, by the way, that most of our wealthier clients are people that they happen to be females.
Right.
Females can think with both sides of your brain at once. That's why you're out thinking the three of us, right? Where our left side's not talking to the right side. But women are usually more disciplined at sticking to a plan and putting away $50 or $100 a month. And it's funny because I see all these young women coming into our office, really, truly.
Right.
And mom and dad say to the young ladies, go to talk to the financial guys, and they're setting up plans for $100 a month, $200 a month. And I watch that young lady leave the office. I think, you know what? 20, 30 years from now, she will be the one with $1 million, $2 million here, right?
So
the young men, not all the time, because I'll tell you, I was pretty good with this, and I was blessed that I had a family that taught me.
You had your father that kept.
But a lot of guys, they want the hot rods, right? They want the women.
So you have to be disciplined.
You got to be disciplined. You got to put it away. But look at $50 a month. Come on, $100 a month. That's where you start.
And I like
it could
that
be Tim Hortons.
philosophy.
It could be so many little things you can cut. We always do a budget whenever we're doing any sort of financial planning with a client. So risk tolerance is important, but knowing your expenses are also as important. And so with all of our homework, when a client comes in, they're going to get a budgeting questionnaire. It's going to give us their future sources of income plus their expenses. So for somebody in that situation, we would probably start there and say, let's be very honest and let's identify every dollar you're spending in every single spot. And like Mike said, you'd be surprised. You go to Tim Hortons every day, once a day, $2 a day.
That's $40 a month. $50 a month.
There's your $50 a month, right? Well, it could be just that simple.
Got a question for after the break about 401ks and all that. But 803-0930, 803-0930, star 930 on a cell phone, and we're going to catch you on the other side. Frank always plays the music to get you going, but I'm glad it's not the new Taylor Swift song.
Is there
He's sitting there going, "Oh God, shut up."
I took Olivia, my 9-year-old, to a 10-year-old now, to Taylor Swift a few years ago with my sister Cheryl and her daughter, and the kids were sleeping, and I'm there watching Taylor Swift.
In Toronto?
No, Buffalo.
Oh, in Buffalo? Oh, okay.
Daughters to Toronto.
To Toronto to see Taylor Swift, yep.
And Chris and I went to the aquarium.
Yeah, we wandered Toronto while they were there.
It was very nice.
I'm not going to admit that I knew every song. I'm not going to admit it.
But he did, guys.
That wasn't me singing.
But
everybody's like, I thought you didn't know her. And the next day I came into the office, I'm like, no, I didn't. No.
But let's talk, talking about money, because that's what you guys do. You know, we're talking about 401ks and young kids, but I know we see it a lot doing tax returns, and it gets frustrating. I'm sure for you guys it does too. How many young kids do you see? And I shouldn't even say young, because I'm sure there's 40-year-olds out there in the same boat that are working at a place that offer 401ks that says, oh, I don't have the money to do it, but they're losing free money too because of the 3% match. And, you know, that $20 a week that you put in can turn to $40 because of the match.
I'll tell you, the biggest reason that happens is education. And we have a 401k arm led by Jeff Fine now that sets up 401k plans. And part of what we pride ourselves on is going into the location and actually really educating the employees on what they have. Because you're right. I mean, can you imagine if somebody said, oh, there's $50 a month I'm just going to leave in your $100 a month I'm going to leave in your parking lot, and you say, nah, I don't want it, just leave it there. Yeah. No, I'm not going to pick it up. That's crazy, right? And people do that with 401k plans. But the biggest thing is a lot of these young people don't even know anything about their 401k plan. Oh, I don't know they have free money, and that so part of our team will educate them.
I think that goes back to what you guys were saying: pay yourself first.
Yes.
And that's paying yourself first.
Yes.
But a lot of employers are utilizing a match as a part of their compensation, right? So it might be in lieu of a higher income or higher salary. So you really have to take advantage of that. For an employer, it's in their best interest to put it in a 401k match versus a salary, because you get some better, taxability, like it's no payroll tax and things like that. So,
and then they can put more of their own money away.
Yeah, and they can put more of their own money away. So if you're in a job that offers a match and you're not capturing that, you might as well go get a job that doesn't have a match but has a higher salary, because you're losing out on that potential.
But
what is really income.
I mean, Mike said, $100 a month. That's $1,200 over 10 years. That's $12,000 you could have had.
Yeah.
And those are the people that are going to be when they're older. If I only did it.
If I said to you, okay, if you put away $3,000 a year, I'm going to guarantee you 100% return on your money. You'd be like, you can't do that. You can't put a 100% guarantee. But if the $3,000 a year is 3% of your salary and the match is 3%, a dollar for dollar for the first 3%, essentially you're getting 100% rate of return because the corporation is matching dollar for dollar. Anything that is returned beyond that from whatever investments you pick within that 401k, it's just gravy on top of it, which is terrific.
Well, I think this hits everybody. I was talking to one of my clients this week, and she makes $130,000 a year, and she's 39 years old. And she really hasn't put anything in her 401k. And so she was talking to me about planning. She's getting a job offer for a job in Florida, and she has a job offer for a job in Virginia. And she's deciding, and it came back down to state income tax. There's no state income tax in Florida. And so we ran the numbers, and it was better for her to take the job in Florida. And I got to tell you, Esther helped me with this. And so just like you guys said, you have to look at the whole picture and start off with the budget and look at the state income tax and look at the 401k and look at the benefit package that's in front of you.
That's why a lot of people, when they retire, they leave New York State, right? They go other places because they say, listen, I've worked my whole life. Now I've got to draw $40,000 a year for my investments. If I can save 5% of that $40,000 and not pay New York State, people are going to Tennessee, they're going to Texas, they're going to Florida. We're licensed in
i.e., by the way, we talk about to Nancy where money meets politics, right?
Right,
I mean,
exactly. But I think we're licensed in like 40-some states.
Yeah,
because
that's right. They're everywhere, but
they're everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and that's going to continue, right? I mean, money is like water. It's going to flow to where it's welcome. It's going to flow to where it's, where there's it's going to flow to where it's welcome. That's it, right? That's where companies go. That's where businesses go. It's funny. We're all proud because we got a little bit of our tax money that we've been abused for 30-something years. So we got a little bit back to build a park down on the waterfront. Brian Higgins showed up and did the ribbon cutting and the smiling and the happiness. And Buffalo lost 900 jobs last year. We were negative, right? Yeah. So all this positive about how great the city's doing and everybody's coming back. We lost 900 jobs last year.
In a roaring bull market. Right. Now, it's not a roaring economy. Yeah. I mean, I can't say roaring economy because 2.5% is not roaring.
But it's growing.
It's growing.
On a national level, it's growing. And it's growing because of places like Florida, like Texas.
And then another person asked this question. The market, sorry to switch gears, I don't know much about this. They want to know do you think the market is too inflated right now?
Again, it doesn't matter. It really, I mean, again, there's never the perfect time unless you have a crystal ball.
Right.
Now, is it inflated? Well, it's more expensive than it was. It's on average with the higher end of the spectrum. It doesn't mean it can't go higher than that, though. But again, what's your time frame?
Right.
As Mike, you pointed out perfectly, even if you invested at the top of the market back in 2007 and then went through the crash, you're still better off today, just 10 years later.
If you just held on, right?
Right.
And when people refer to the market, they're usually talking about the Dow Jones Industrial Average, right? Yep. The Dow is only 30 stocks, and here's where people got to be very careful, okay? The Dow Jones Industrial Average gets to do what I call a do-over. General Motors was in the Dow Jones Industrial Average a bunch of years ago, and it went bankrupt, right? So if the four of us bought 30 stocks and they happened to be the same 30 stocks that were in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, we would have been left with 29 because nobody says, don't worry about it, Tiff. Here's some money. Let's pretend you owned a different stock, right?
Okay.
But that's what happens with the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So General Motors goes out of business. Well, not out of business, but bankrupt.
Right.
All the investors lose all their money. And on TV, the Dow says, yeah, you know what? You know what's been doing good? Apple. Let's throw that in there. Right? So just do yourself a favor. Think about, go back and do the homework. If you're an investor worried about it being inflated, go back and look at all the stocks that were there 7 or 8 years ago.
Gotcha.
And if those stocks were not, if they were still in there, that Dow Jones Industrial Average would look very different.
But
so that means it can go considerably higher.
Speaking of homework, and I know we see the people once a year doing their taxes and they get mad at us because their stocks, and I'll say, well, did you look at it during the year? Well, my broker does that. No. Did you those monthly statements, those quarterly?
Yep.
Do you pull them up? Do you go online?
Well, and again, and it's funny because as you two know, this happened. This was a true story. This happened last year. A mutual client called, and they were mad because they switched to us 2 years before, and now they had to pay taxes. And they were, right? I don't know if you remember this, and she was so upset. And I said, okay, look, I'm going to talk to our investment department, and we're going to change our strategy. And she said, what are we going to change it to? I said, I'm going to mark down that we want to lose you money every single year now. And she said, that's stupid. I said, you're the one that wanted it.
Right.
And she said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you had losses from your old planner that carried forward, and those losses we were able to use last year. But your portfolio did really well this year, and not only did we make up for all those losses, but you have gains now.
We say that.
And she went,
people are
I got
like,
it.
I owe money this year. And Chris and I will say, but you had a lot of capital gains. Your investments did really good.
So certainly we want to be tax efficient, but we also have to remember, like, look, we're here to make money.
That,
right?
Yeah, I have people who I'll say, you have $10,000 extra dollars there. So,
and then
And then
you know what I tell
you what, I'll pay your taxes.
Yeah,
you give me the $10,000,
and then I'll say, welcome to the conservative party.
Right.
Just getting back to the high market, inflated prices or whatever. If you're concerned about that, you can always dollar cost average. That's you can always say, you know what, I got $100,000 I want to put in. I'm going to put in $10,000 over the next 10 months, every month for 10 months, and then I'll get my. That way, if it does dip, if it does pull back, if it does go, typically corrections are pretty short lived.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare in our stock market history where we have a multi-year, a slide. It's happened. I'm not saying it can't happen, but most of the corrections are
2 to 3 months,
fast and sharp. Right,
2 to 3 months. Get a diversified portfolio. Take advantage of it.
That's
right? Buy stocks cheap when everybody else is running. Buy stocks, and when everybody else is wants to buy stocks, that's when you lighten up.
That makes sense. Well, hey, you guys have two great parents that did good. What did your dad, this isn't written on my questions, but what did your dad do, Glenn, when he built up his portfolio? What was his magic? What did he do? 401k?
Well, he did a SEP mainly because he was a small business owner, right?
Okay. Did he SEP?
He ran, he started off at PricewaterhouseCoopers. I'm sure he had a 401k there, but then very quickly he went out and he started his own practice, much like Mike and I did on the financial side. And so he had a SEP as a self-employed individual his whole life, and so that's where he really funded a lot of it. My mother was a Buffalo school teacher, so she did take advantage of the 403B, and so very similar to a 401k, more or less. But she was able to fund,
and that's so important. I have another teacher who retired this year, and she had been teaching for 40 years, but she never did the 403B, and she thought about it 35 years in, but then it was too late.
Well, a lot of teachers bank on their pension.
Yeah.
So a lot of teachers say, I don't need to save. I got this great pension. If you do both, then you're in great shape.
Well, Chris Fabian, Tiffany Fabian from EG Tax, call us at 632-7886 during the week. The Financial Guys, find them at thefinancialguys.com, 633-1515. And you heard for this hour, they do know their financial stuff.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Have a great
Tiffany.
weekend.
Thank you very much.